Hi, friends. This is Dorie Clark, and I am here with Deborah Riegel and Sophie Riegel, and they are the authors of a new book called Go to Help, which is about why is it that we are so bad at asking for help, and how can we get a little better at it? Deb, Sophie, so great to have you both here.
Thanks for having us.
Excellent. We're delighted. And if you want to learn more about the book, you can go to helpbook.com. But okay, the first question for all of you here, you wrote this book together. Why? Which of you had the problem asking for help? And how did you decide to turn what I anticipate was surely a family squabble into a work of business literature that can help other people? Do tell.
You go, Soph.
Well, we had a previous book come out during or a little bit before the pandemic called Overcoming Overthinking, and one of the chapters in it was talking about how to ask for help, and people kept saying we want to know more about this, and instead of doing the normal thing, which is maybe writing an article, we go big or go home. So we wrote another book about it, about just that specific chapter. And I think both of us have gotten much better at asking for help, and both of us have also been at points in our life where we don't really want to ask for help.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that occurred to both me and Sophie is that we, in asking for help, we were making an assumption that other people knew how to help and had what we call help fluency, a wide range of ways of offering help. And we were pretty surprised and disappointed to see that most people help like, let me tell you what to do, or stand back and I'm just going to do it for you. And we felt that whether you're a leader or a parent or a partner or whatever it is, you probably need to get a wider range of helping options as well. So this book is for them too.
A wider range of helping options sounds like an excellent strategy. And welcome to those just tuning in. This is Newsweek's weekly interview show, Better. I'm Dorie Clark. We're here every Thursday at noon Eastern, 9 Pacific, talking about how to improve your quality of life. And today we're talking about how to get better at asking for help with Deborah Grayson Riegel and Sophie Riegel. And if you're just tuning in, please feel free to type into the chat box and let us know who you are and where you are dialing in from. We'd love to recognize you and give you a shout out. And so another question that I have at a really basic level, you would think that for most people asking for help would be relatively self-evident. There's a thing I want to do. There's a thing that I need. Oh, I can't do it on my own. Let me tap my resources. But for so many people, it seems like that just doesn't really compute. There's something blocking them from asking for the help that they need. What is it that is getting in the way? Sophie, what's your perspective on that?
My perspective is that people have a certain mindset about asking for help, and some of the mindsets they have might be, if I ask for help, I'm going to be seen as incompetent, or I should be able to do this on my own, or I don't want to be a burden to other people. And it's those thoughts and those beliefs that are really getting in the way of them asking for help.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And so I just wanted to take a moment to say hello to some of the great folks who are tuning in from around the world. We have so many folks here. We have Sushma joining us. We have Julie from Las Vegas. Todd's here from New York. Cheryl from Minneapolis, St. Paul. Aiko from Palo Alto. Michelle's joining us from California. Scott's here from Baltimore. We have a LinkedIn user from California. Jeannie is joining us from Georgia. Elen is here. DT from Rochester. Anna's here from New Hampshire. We have Astrid from Mexico City, Deborah from Buckinghamshire, Anand from India. We have Kia Ora from New Zealand, and many more. We're so glad for all of you to be here. If you're enjoying the conversation, please hit the like and the share button so that others can benefit from our conversation about how to get better at asking for help. You can check out the details of Deb and Sophie Riegel's book. Go to helpbook.com. Now, Deb, a question that I have for you. What about a situation where you're looking at someone you care about them, you want to be helpful, but they aren't asking? They might not even really want help. It's a little bit unclear. Is there anything that you can do in that situation? Should we only be giving help to people if they're explicitly asking for it? Or how do we avoid overstepping and insulting somebody?
Yeah, I think a big part of it depends on the trust and psychological safety in the relationship. So you have to look at your track record. Is this somebody where I've offered help in the past and they've accepted it wholeheartedly? Is this somebody where I've offered help in the past, they've shut me down? And what does that lead me to want to do? I think that one of the most important things that helpers need to recognize, we write about this quite a bit in the book, is that your intention in helping does not necessarily match your impact in helping. So most of us have often thought to ourselves, I'm only trying to help, or I was just here to help. And we need to recognize that there can sometimes be a gap in what it is we're trying to do and how the other person receives it. We're trying to be generous. They experience it as us undermining their autonomy or sense of agency. And so one of the best things that we can do, and that most of us don't do, is ask for feedback about our help. Hey, share with me a time that I was particularly helpful for you, and what did I do? And I have the feeling that sometimes my help isn't as helpful as you would want it to be. Can you tell me a little bit about that so I can be a better helper to you moving forward?
I think that's great. Obviously, starting an open dialogue and conversation is a really important element here. So thank you for that. We want to say hi to some of our friends tuning in from around the world. We have Alan joining us from Mexico. We have Gokhan from Turkey. Deepak is here from the United Arab Emirates. We've got Morty from New York and Miami. I look forward to hanging out in Miami, Morty. And we have Amadi from Nigeria. We're so glad to have all of you here. Now, Sophie, something that I'm interested in, I think we can all probably learn by example, because perhaps for many of us, we have not been asking for the help that maybe we should have. Could you tell us about a time when you asked for and or received help that was beneficial? Was there any situations where maybe it was a little bit of a stretch for you? You didn't feel fully comfortable in asking, but you made it happen. What did that look like?
Actually, just recently, I was working on a group project with a bunch of people in a class at Duke, and I felt like I was doing all the work. And it's hard because you think at Duke, there's going to be all the people who want to do all the work, and that's unfortunately not the case. And so, I was basically saying to myself, like, I don't want to have to do this anymore, or like pull the weight of the team. So I reached out to my professor and said, "What do I do about this?" And I didn't want to have them think I was like a tattletale, or have them think that I just wanted to slack off. So I was nervous about asking for help from my professor, but my professor was really receptive and helped me come up with a strategy to get everyone more involved, so that I didn't feel like I had to take on the whole project by myself. And it was really beneficial. So I'm glad I asked for help.
I love that. That's a really useful anecdote, and thank you for sharing that. Now, a question has come in across the transom, and for any of you who are tuning in and watching, we're here with Deborah, Grayson Riegel, and Sophie Riegel. They're the authors of the new book, Go to Help. You can check it out at gotohelpbook.com. And we're all learning today about how to get better at asking for help, asking for and receiving it, as a matter of fact. So please type your questions for them about anything help related into the chat box. And Morty had a great question that came in. Deb, he wants to know, how do you ask for help without coming across as needy? This is a big one. I can imagine this is a huge barrier for many people. But what is your perspective in response to Morty's question about how do you make sure you don't look like just, that person, that guy or that gal who's always wanting something? What do you think?
Yeah. So I think check your tone and check your frequency. So, right, check your tone. There's something about, the tone in which you might ask for help, which is holding it lightly. So, for example, I might say, "Hey, I could use a little help setting some priorities for my project. Are you available to help me? Is this something you can help me with?" As opposed to, "Please, please help me. I'm dying here." So, number one is, handling it with a professional tone and leaving sort of a really, I would say, a desperate tone, an impassioned tone for when those moments really happen. So you don't want to be the person who cries wolf, where everything has a sense of urgency. And you also want to check the frequency with which you are asking for help. So if you are asking the same person over and over again, you may want to vary the people who are helping you. And if you are asking for help on the same topic over and over again, it might be the time to tap into your resources and learn that skill, or outsource it to somebody else so that you don't have to do it. So those are a couple of ways to keep that in mind. And I guess the third thing, which will be a theme of anything we talk about, is get some feedback. I recognize that I've been asking for a lot of help, and I want to make sure that the impact I'm having on you doesn't feel needy. Could you share that with me?
So good. I love that. We just have to change it up. You're exactly right. If we keep coming to the same people for the same things all the time, eventually it gets a little old. So very useful to be thoughtful about the ecosystem of your asks. And we are here, incidentally, if you're just tuning in, this is Newsweek's weekly interview show, Better. I'm Dorie Clark. We're here with Deb Riegel and Sophie Riegel, authors of the new book, Go to Help. If you're enjoying this conversation and you want to make sure you never miss one of them, you can follow me on LinkedIn and sign up for my weekly LinkedIn newsletter. You'll get reminders about these shows. Just go to dorieclark.com/LinkedIn. And if you want to learn more about their great new book, check out gotohelpbook.com. And in the meantime, we wanted to say hi to some friends tuning in from around the world. Zulima's here from Mexico. Maureen is joining us. We have Teresa from Germany. We have Anusuya from Hong Kong. We have Angelica from Serbia, and many more. But a great question came in, and this one, I think, let's go to you, Sophie. Cheryl wants to know, if you have a specific ask, how do you know when the timing is right? We don't want to blow it by asking it at an inopportune moment. How do we begin to get a pulse to know when the right time is?
I think getting a sense of the environment and the relationship, as my mom said before, is really important. So if you have a really important ask, don't ask someone when they're in the middle of, applying to med school, or in the middle of a family emergency, or whatever it might be. You want to make sure that it's the right time. And you can also say, is this a good time for me to ask? Right? Just asking the question instead of wondering will get you a lot more accurate feedback than just going for it without any data.
Yeah. And I would add to that, if I may.
Please.
When I do leadership training and management training, one of the questions that I recommend that everybody ask their boss, their colleagues, their direct reports is this: what is the best way for me to get your attention about something that feels important to me if other methods haven't worked? And I'm going to say that one more time because it is such a rich question, she said, patting herself on the back. What is the best way for me to get your attention about something important to me if other methods haven't worked? And if you have asked that question of your direct report, of your boss, of your colleague, you basically are given an operating manual on how to ask them for something.
Yes, that's fantastic, because it's so true. Oftentimes, if we are feeling unheard in the workplace, we tend to escalate. And at a certain point, we may reach the point where we feel like, okay, I'm just shouting them out of the crowd to be heard. And if the other person has not been paying attention, they don't understand that there's crowd noise, they freak out and say, oh my God, they're hysterical. And that's not a really good situation. So I think that's very wise advice. I love that. And we have so many questions pouring in from our audience. These are fantastic. Our friend Todd Churches, a former guest on this show, author of the book Visual Leadership. Todd has a question for you guys. Let's start with Sophie. Todd wants to know, what advice do you have for introverts like him, also like me, who may feel uncomfortable about bothering people by asking for their help? Is there a way that we can get over this internal narrative that, oh, it's an imposition, I don't want them to feel like, oh, it's Todd again? What would you say to that?
I think, again, it's a mindset shift, right? So if you can shift your beliefs into thinking people are actually wanting and waiting to help me, instead of they don't want to help me, I'm being a burden, whatever it might be, our mindsets direct how we behave. And I think that'll change our actions. And start with one person, right? You don't need to go ask the CEO of your company for help. Start with a coworker who you feel close to. Start with a family member, someone who you have a good relationship with. And so you can, if you start small, you'll gain more confidence in asking for the bigger things.
Yeah, fantastic. That's very helpful. And a question, Deb, that I was curious about: if you were on the other side of the equation, if you're the person who is going to be giving help, wants to offer help to somebody, are there types of help that you could offer potentially that just maybe people don't think of? Or I can imagine that, we all sort of have this narrative about, oh, well, if somebody died, I can send flowers, or, whatever the sort of standard thing is. But I can imagine that there's probably an untapped reservoir of types of things or types of ways that we actually could be helpful to people that we just have as blind spots. We're not even thinking of them. Do you have thoughts about that, or just kind of
Yeah.
unexpected ways that we might be able to be helpful?
As you can imagine, I have 31 thoughts, since the book is 31 strategies to offer, ask for, and accept help. And I think a particular, if I could root it in an example, one of the things that Sophie and I spend quite a bit of time writing about and talking about is Sophie and I both have mental illness. And we have really good mental well-being, and we also have mental illness. And many people think that when we are talking about our anxiety or our OCD or our panic, whatever it may be, that the way to help is to problem solve for us or with us. And we are not problems to be solved, and mental illness isn't a problem to be solved. And so some of the ways that we encourage people to offer help is listen without judgment. Empathize with us rather than cheerlead us, right? So if somebody says, I'm having a really hard day, our instinct might be to be like, come on, the sun is out, it's a beautiful day. Actually, it can be way more helpful to say, it does sound like you're having a hard day. Tell me more about that. Some other ways of helping that we don't think to offer somebody is to ask, would it be helpful for you just to stop? Right? It seems like what you're doing right now isn't working, or you're putting a lot of effort into things. Would it be helpful to think about taking a break in terms of what you're doing rather than progressing? Would it be helpful to celebrate how far you've come? All of these strategies are different than our typical approaches of, let me see if I can fix you or fix it for you, especially around something that can't really be fixed.
I love that. And I'm just going to ask a follow-up, Deb, because, unfortunately, I'm one of those people that loves to tell people what to do. I try to rein myself in, but I can also imagine that it's a little bit of like a decision tree, right? Because there actually are some circumstances where telling somebody what to do actually is the right move. My computer's frozen. Oh, well, have you tried doing Control-Alt-Delete? Oh, this is a conversation that I have with my mother like all the time. Is okay. Sometimes it's good to tell them what to do, but to your point, that is not always the right move. How do we actually, in the moment when we're sort of wearing our "okay, I'm trying to be helpful" hat, how can we figure out what is the right path to go down in being useful to that person?
Yes. So the simplest answer is to ask them, right? What kind of help would be most helpful for you right now? Would you like me to give you advice, tell you what to do, or is there some other kind of help that you would need? But let's say you've decided, no, I'm going to figure this out myself. I don't want somebody to tell me how to be helpful. The first thing to actually think about is whether this is a technical challenge or an adaptive challenge. And this comes from the work from Ron Heifetz and Marty Linsky around adaptive leadership. And so a technical challenge is really one where there is an existing answer. It is a problem to be solved. You go out, and if you find the missing puzzle piece, you snap it in, you can get the problem fixed. Many problems, especially parents, partners, and leaders face, are adaptive problems, meaning that you actually have to experiment your way into a solution. So if you think about the last 2 years, none of us in March of 2020 were able to call our local global pandemic expert to tell us what to do. The solution didn't exist. So if somebody is asking for help with a problem where the solution is going to require creativity, new habits, new mindsets, and experimentation, telling them what to do most likely is not the most helpful way to get that solved. Or if anything, it's a part of it, but it's not the whole approach.
And just to
Fantastic.
add to that, I think it's important to note that if you don't want to create a habit of compliance, then you don't want to tell them what to do. So, for example, when my car kept breaking down, my dad kept, whatever it's called, fixing it at some, I don't even know. Clearly, he didn't do a very good job of teaching me, but sorry, Dad. But anyways, jumping the car, whatever it was, he just kept jumping it for me, and so I never learned how to do it. So every time my car broke down, I just went to him. So I never learned the strategy. But if he wants to create commitment in me instead of compliance, he can't tell me what to do. He needs to teach me the skills to actually do it myself.
I love it. Teach them to fish and or jumpstart their car. Good advice. We want to say hi to some of our new friends tuning in from around the world. Mubina's here from Pakistan. We have Rita Marie, who's joining us from Ireland. And we have Gail and Margot tuning in from Miami. Great to have all of you here. And a question came in. Sophie, would love to get your perspective here from Teresa in Germany. She's curious, how do you strike the right balance of figuring it out for yourself or asking for help? Obviously, both are useful. How do we know when it's the right move?
I don't know that I have the perfect answer for that, because I think that question itself is an adaptive challenge. But I do think that you want to push yourself until you feel challenged, but not completely overwhelmed to the point where you can't even move forward, right? Like, you don't want to get yourself in a situation where asking for help is literally the only option for you. You want to ask before you need it, but you don't want to ask before you've tried yourself.
Really helpful. Thank you. That's great. We're here with Deborah, Grayson Riegel, and Sophie Riegel. They are the authors of the new book, Go to Help. You can learn more at gotohelpbook.com. And if you are enjoying this conversation, hit the like button, hit the share button so that your friends can benefit from it as well. We're talking about how we can all get better at asking for help and learning how to receive it. So Deb, a question that I am curious about: what if you're someone that just by nature is kind of a self-reliant type, maybe a bit of a lone wolf? It might not even occur to you that you need help. That might just literally not be in your repertoire. Is there a way that you can kind of awaken that in yourself if that is not a muscle that you have deployed over time?
Yeah, so you're describing me, right? I am somebody who grew up with the message of being resourceful, and I interpreted being resourceful as figuring it out myself, leaning on my internal resources. I didn't interpret it as, oh, there are external resources available for me to take advantage of. And so you are describing me. Asking for help is often the last thing that I go to on my list. So we kind of wrote this book for me, right? And you shall learn. And so I think one of the ways that you can uncover a blind spot for yourself is to actually look at examples where you have received help that was beneficial, even if you weren't the one who asked for it. So it's a little bit about the same method you would use to combat any kind of confirmation bias. If you have a belief that I need to do it alone or I should do it alone, you will look for evidence that you need to do it alone or should do it alone. To combat that confirmation bias, look for evidence that you didn't do it alone or that you were better off having asked somebody to help you in some way, and you will start to develop the ability to see those opportunities.
Really interesting. Thank you for that. That's great. And I see some comments are just pouring in here from folks that are tuning in. Again, if you're just joining us, feel free to let us know who you are and where you're dialing in from. Rachel is here from Baltimore. We've got Thomas from Cambridge, Massachusetts. It can be especially tricky if you are a consultant or a coach to refrain from sharing your advice here. But this is great. Luis, who is a good friend and an executive coach, he says, I ask my wife all the time, how do you want me to respond to that? Do you want me to give you advice? Do you want me to listen? Do you want me to coach you? So a wise practice all around. Thanks for sharing that, Luis. Love that. And so I am actually curious, Sophie, let's turn to you. Are there types of help, I'll put this in air quotes, that actually are not that useful? Like maybe things that we should just stop doing altogether? Or is it really more just a question of the particular situation? I don't know. Or if we are well-intentioned human beings that really are legitimately trying to be helpful, are there things that we should just kind of cross off our list? Or how do we think about that? We don't want it to backfire, obviously. So what should we do?
I think every kind of help has its own situation where it can be useful. But I think the one thing we need to stop doing is assuming we know how to help someone else. And instead get to the point where we're comfortable asking, what kind of help do you need? Is this helpful? And being willing to take the feedback of, you know what, that actually wasn't helpful at all. And knowing that that is just helping you become a better helper. It's not a personal attack. And learning how to take that feedback is the best way, I think, to cross off the list for you of things that aren't helpful in certain situations, and you start to learn from that.
And I think we also have some habits that when we attach them to our help actually undermine our impact. So some unhelpful helping habits, say that 3 times fast, might include offering to help somebody or saying yes to a request for help when you don't want to, can't, or shouldn't. We undermine our attempts to help when we help somebody and then expect to be thanked over and over, or expect to be given a lot of public credit for our help. We undermine our attempts to help when we believe that we should share our own experience as a form of help if they didn't ask for that. So in the book, we have about a dozen ways in which you think you might be helping, but you're actually cut yourself off at the knees because all of these things undermine your attempts to build trust through help.
That's really wise. Thank you. We're here with Deb Riegel and Sophie Riegel. They're the authors of the new book, Go to Help. You can learn more about both of them. You can go to sophieriegel.com. You can go to deborahgraysonriegel.com. And if you are enjoying this, we do it every week. We do it every Thursday at noon Eastern and 9 Pacific. Just go to dorieclark.com. That's my website. You can sign up for the email list, get a free self-assessment, and you will get reminders about these super fun conversations. Now, Deb, I want to turn this to the workplace because you do a lot of coaching, you do a lot of consulting and speaking. So I am curious and would love to get your perspective. How can leaders apply this? How can a leader be a better helper to his or her employees? What would you say to that?
Yeah, so chances are a leader has been recognized, rewarded, and reinforced for 1 or 2 ways of helping, right? So that may be the leader who is, has great technical expertise, and so they have moved into a leadership role because they know how to fix it or tell people how to fix it. So one of the things that leaders need to do is to recognize what kind of help has gotten them here, and to recognize, like any other leadership or managerial skill set, what got you here won't get you there, to borrow from Marshall Goldsmith. And the idea behind that is to develop a wide range of helping skills. So for example, in my executive coaching work, I work with a lot of technical leaders who are excellent at fixing problems and are sometimes not great at or haven't developed the muscle around empathizing, really listening, cheerleading, supporting, helping somebody take a step back, evaluate the big picture before offering technical solutions. And so by recognizing what you are good at, what you've been recognized and rewarded for, it will reveal a whole bunch of strategies that you may not have had the opportunity to strengthen in the same way. So the book has 31 ways of helping. Chances are leaders are good at a few of them, but there's lots of opportunities to grow in your role and grow in your impact.
That's so great. Thank you very much for sharing that. We are getting to the denouement of our time together, but I have one last question for both you, Deb, and Sophie. Back years ago, there was a T-shirt. I guess it was a T-shirt before memes were things. It was kind of a meme T-shirt, and it would say, "Practice random acts of kindness and senseless acts of beauty." And I am curious if somebody wants to practice a random or perhaps not so random act of help today. If they say, you know what, I am inspired by this, I would like to help someone. What is a useful way that they can get started identifying who they could help and figuring out how they can do it? Is there any sort of principles or guidelines for someone that is fired up to make a difference? Sophie, let's start with you. What would you recommend for somebody who wants to get going?
I would start by asking, what would you like from someone else? And think about how can you do that for someone else then? And make sure that you're checking your assumptions. And instead of assuming, oh, I got to go help this person, or, oh, this person needs this, you can help someone best by asking someone, what do you need from me right now? Or what can I help you with right now? And not attaching the things that my mom mentioned earlier. Don't help someone that you don't actually want to help. Don't help someone with strings attached. So making sure you're checking yourself is the best way to help someone else.
Fantastic. All right, Deb Riegel, last word goes to you.
I would say go back to your team or your family and ask people, what is one thing I could do to make your job 10% easier? And then be willing to do that.
Ooh, so good. It's a nice way to frame it so that we can all get very specific. We've been here with Deborah Grayson Riegel and Sophie Riegel, authors of the book Go to Help. You can get it at gotohelpbook.com. We will see you next week for our Newsweek show every Thursday, noon Eastern, 9 Pacific. Thank you all for tuning in. And Deb and Sophie, so great to have you here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care, everyone.